all know what the issues are here.
What are we
I think
afraid of?
we have plenty of input and enough to discuss this issue. And if we feel that we need more input, then we can do that. But I don't think we need it at this point. This is just language that we're trying to work on to close down the ordinance. And this was an internal discussion that we were having subsequent to our vote. And there is no expectation to open up for public hearing at this point from our previous discussions.
And I guess just from my perspective, it's pretty clear there's not an adequate number of folks in the audience because we've had so many more people here when it was open to discussion. And many of the emails we've received as a board in the past several days included language that said, we know that the hearing has been closed to the public.
I will also indicate that along those lines, it is my feeling that we have made every indication through our previous discussion at our previous meeting that this would not be an open discussion, that we would just be discussing the grandfather issue. And it's not fair to then open it up to the few people who came here without proper things. So I don't think it's fair to open it up. With that, Richard, let's talk about the grandfather language.
Sure. Okay. Basically, I did want to, could we go at least restate what the geographic areas are for the public who's.
And there's a typo that we want to correct.
Whatever you
Since they've all been
whatever you
changed.
wish to restate.
Right. So on page 3 of the final ordinance I drafted and passed out to you, where it says B regulations, it reads the areas that are included. So these are the areas that you could apply for short-term rental. And again, first clarifying that these are only areas that currently don't allow transient occupancy right now. Much of the city allows this currently, the beachfront condos. We've had a lot of questions from people who have apartments on the beach. They're already included. This is just to address the areas of the city that don't allow hotels or transient occupancy. So the areas of this proposed program would be the following. In the Flamingo Park and Collins Waterfront Historic Districts, the RM1 and TH districts, and then in North Beach, the RM1 district located north of 73rd Street, and that's a typo that it says 75th Street in what I handed out, but it's 73rd Street. Daniel correctly found that and pointed that typo out. And then the triangle bounded by Indian Creek Drive, Harding Avenue, and 71st Street. And there are maps in your report that show all those areas. So with that, the operational requirements are in the ordinance, the geographic areas are in the ordinance, and then there was some discussion of, in other areas of the city that weren't included here, could somebody who has been engaged in short-term rentals up to this point get grandfathered in? And staff was asked to draft a provision that would be usable to say that if you were, according to certain criterias, and you could show that you were having these short-term rentals and, I assume, paying the proper resort tax, you could also be qualified for this approval, just like if you were in these other districts. So that you will find at the bottom of page 5, starting with applicability.
And Richard, obviously, those people would be subject to all of the conditions in the ordinance.
Yes, it's the grandfather clause says during a one-year period of time after the date of the ordinance. So if the commission passes this and it becomes effective, then for 1 year after that, if you qualify, you can, if you demonstrate compliance with the criteria, you may apply for short-term rental approval as detailed in the rest of the ordinance that is only applying to those areas that we set.
So staff is recommending that we limit these folks to a period of 365 days to make application to be grandfathered, and then on the 366th day, if they don't, they would not be allowed to. Is that correct?
We think there should be some limited window of
I'm just
opportunity
asking.
after which it becomes irrelevant. Then you might as well just codify it, that it applies to everybody. But the key here is the criteria which would be required to qualify for this And, you know, we batted around a lot. I think some people said if somebody had been paying resort tax all this time, even though, you know, the city has said this is not permitted, but they're paying their resort tax, that should be something that could be used to qualify for grandfathering in. So we can't pass you out all the resort tax data. That's not public information. But we did look it up and see that every apartment in the city is registered, but you only have to pay if you do short-term rentals of less than 6 months. So whatever rents you're receiving for less than 6 months, you have to pay the resort tax. A lot of these accounts have, you know, a small amount here and there based on a broken lease. If I leased it for 6 months or a year, and the person left after 5 months, then I do have to pay. But I'm not really engaged in short-term rentals, and we're not really looking to include those occasional broken leases in the program. So the first criteria we were saying would be if you were paying at least half of your total room revenue, if half or more of your rents were of short-term nature, that's demonstrated in the resort tax returns over the last 2 years. And again, these are timeframes we can discuss, but you know, several of the people who have come and spoken and said they are doing this would qualify. That's their main business, so more than half of their qualifying rentals are of the short-term nature, and they've paid more than 50%. The other thing was if you're not paying quite 50%, but you've been doing it a long time on a certain amount, and so we came up with an absolute figure, and you know, it was all over the range from 1,000 to 5,000 or more. We finally said